This work is nothing short of being able to exist beyond the material world, a consciousness perfected as a stone by doing the work needed to achieve it, the great work. By working with the represented by this symbol and bring them together as a whole, we come into union with that which is the whole, the one. We will now go through some basic aspects to understand the process of the great work, which began with the one, or as it's sometimes referred to as the all. Please take note as we begin. This is not about religion or established dogma or creed. This is about advanced spiritual science, pure and simple. Therefore, when we mention the one or the all, it may or may not be directly referring to deity, but rather to the creative force which encompasses all that is and is not. The one is everything, every potentiality, every outcome. It is the divine principle and prima materia. The one is Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end of the great work, and in this is sometimes represented by the Ouroboros. This is one of the most perplexing and fulfilling aspects to fully understand, and many of us spend a lifetime attempting to do so. In this principle, we examine the concept of duality. In alchemy, we see what is perhaps one of the most easily understood depictions of duality from all traditions. This is seen as the sun and the moon, or Sol and Luna, sulfur and mercury, or the red king and the white queen. This is found throughout that entire attempt to describe the law of opposites: male, female, light, dark, active, passive, and high and low. In Eastern traditions, we see this as yin and yang of the Tao. Surely, aspects of the nature of duality are no accident or coincidence. These are sometimes represented in alchemical imagery as two opposing dragons. One is winged or volatile, one is wingless or fixed. Although we have opposing forces that represent separation, they seek union and to be in balance and harmony. For the alchemists, they strive to reconcile these differences within themselves and create this union. This is done through a process known as solvate coagula, to separate the pure from the impure, the subtle from the gross in the emerald tablet. When done properly and in sufficient repetition, the two can come together perfected as one. This is represented as the perfect matter in the androgyne, or hermaphrodite in alchemical imagery. Alchemists see this principle as tria prima, or the three primes. These are mercury, sulfur, and salt, or spirit, soul, and body. When the two opposing principles of sulfur, masculine, and mercury, feminine, come together, we get the salt or body, which brings together and reconciles these opposing principles within it in order to exist on the material plane in physical form. In the great work, the alchemists work with the three primes in the same process spoke of earlier, solvate coagula, which is interpreted as dissolve and coagulate. This dissolving is done to free the soul and body, or sulfur and salt, using mercury or spirit. In this way, the soul and body can be calcined or purified, and rejoined or bound with spirit, making it one again, free from imperfections. All things which exist contain these three principles. The four commonly known aspects are fire, water, air, and earth as elements, which correspond to the current scientific knowledge of plasma, liquids, gas, and solids. In Kabbalah, these are known as Yod, He, Vav, He, or Jehovah. The fire is our will, the life force or chi as it is seen in Eastern traditions. The water is our emotions, and describes how they can easily flow from one temperature to the next, when not under control. The air is our intellect, and the earth is our body, or matter here on the material plane. These four aspects encompass many things, and can be used to easily identify areas of our personality which needs refined and bound. Balance between these aspects is the key, and when one aspect is lacking, it can be balanced with another as an opposite. All of this builds towards a fully integrated self, capable of refraining from one extreme of the spectrum. In alchemy, the concept of spirit is seen of having great importance. It is viewed as the fifth or additional element to the original four. Modern science at some points accepts this concept and views the fifth element to be what is known as ether, whereas the alchemist knows this element as the quintessence. The quintessence is not only the glue which binds all elements together, it is also seen as what keeps the elements independent of each other. In Kabbalah, this is also known as Shin, which has the quality of fire, and is generally placed right in the middle as Yod, He, Shin, Vav, He. Now that we have reviewed some of the basic alchemical concepts, let's move on and delve deeper into the process. Although alchemical processes can be applied to a variety of things, this film is primarily focused on the alchemist, him or herself, being the experiment. This is solidified under the credo as above, so below, which is essentially describing the relationship of the macrocosm to the microcosm. Consider sacred geometry using the Fibonacci series, which produces the same shape in both pine cones and galaxies. With this, the alchemist can work with things on the material plane and learn more about the properties of the spiritual plane, or vice versa. The great work begins in the stage known as nigredo, or the blackness. With our consciousness as the prima materia is where we find ourselves in the current condition, as the lead in the alchemical allegory. With spirit, we can dissolve and place our prima materia into the athanor or chemical furnace and begin the calcination process, and eliminate any energies which may be blocking growth. Nigredo can be a very powerful stage, as it often signifies a point in one's life where a spiritual evolution is necessary or imminent. It is unfortunate, however, knowing that the material plane cannot fulfill, and the seeking of spiritual truth is an inevitable and required event. In the illustration, take note of the black crow or raven in the setting, signifying undergoing the stage of nigredo. This is a very personal time, where you may begin to look deep into the soul, no matter how uncomfortable it may be at first. There is some debate about if the next stage, known as the cauda pavones, or the peacock's tail, is actually placed after albedo or nigredo. Perhaps it may be different for some individuals. However, for the purposes of this discussion, we will describe this stage here. Out of the whiteness, clarity begins to occur, and the alchemist can experience all of the aspects of the whiteness as one, because unity is found. As Isaac Newton showed us with his prism work, that whiteness that enters from above and can be broken down and seen in all of its brilliant display of colors. We, as divine beings, are the prism. This may be a euphoric experience for the alchemist, as new energies and knowledge not previously experienced come into play. When the peacock's tail emerges and the discipline is established, it signifies the alchemist is entering the next stage, known as albedo. To experience and understand the following stage, known as albedo, one generally must have fully immersed in nigredo, having looked deep within themselves. The source of all existence appears through the void and is seen as a whiteness or a bright light. This occurs due to the understanding of unity in all polarities, and is seen as the one. In this, the alchemist knows the source from which everything sprang, and is aware of the real beauty of the spiritual path in becoming this unification once again. As was mentioned earlier concerning the two opposing forces, this can be seen as the hermaphrodite or Mercury, which is spirit. Spirit has no gender and is associated with pure consciousness. As albedo continues, spirit begins to coagulate with matter, and the volatile is becoming fixed. This is done when our conscious mind peers deep into the subconscious and brings it back to the conscious mind to be observed. Spirit is entering the soul, purifying and coagulating to become solidified and constant in our life. This is when we actually begin to work with spirit and put to action on the material plane, culminating in the formation of the diamond body. Similar to the resurrection of Christ, this can be seen as a solid body of light, purified and incorruptible.
Be quiet, I'm recording, please.
These have merely been brief descriptions of alchemical stages one may experience on their path, and is primarily intended for providing reference for further material at a later time. Hopefully this has given an adequate review for some, and a summary for others. Some of you are practicing alchemists, and some of you have only just discovered the art. One of the most beautiful aspects of alchemy is that it doesn't matter what stage of development you are currently